What is up, my friends and fellow Busybees? I hope you're all doing well and you're staying safe out there in your workshops and garages and wherever else you choose to do your furniture flipping. I had mentioned in episode 42, which was 5 mistakes to avoid on your furniture makeovers, that one of the mistakes I made early on in my furniture refinishing journey was not being vigilant about wearing my safety equipment consistently, which is a big no-no. I had some people reach out and express interest in a full episode dedicated to the safety equipment that you should be wearing in order to keep yourself properly protected, so here she is. You ask and I shall deliver. There is truly so much information out there, and I didn't want this to be too long of an episode, so I decided to only talk about safety equipment and safety gear that you can wear on your body for today's episode. But down the line, I may do one on other safety equipment that can help keep you safe and secure doing this work as well, because as I was going through and writing this, a lot of other things came to mind that are useful to have, so that's probably on its way a little bit later on. So to start off today's episode, just a disclaimer that you should never take anything that I say here on the podcast as official advice, especially as it relates to health and safety and legal things and money and anything else that basically could get me in trouble. I always try to do my research to bring as informed information to you guys as possible, but at the end of the day, I'm just a normal person, so I make mistakes all the time. So please do always do your own research and check official trusted resources and medical professionals when making decisions as they relate to your body and your health. Please and thank you. That being said, today I'm going to bring you my recommendations and what I do based on my own research and experience to keep me and my body safe and in good working order to be able to continue to do this work long term. I'm also not perfect, so there are definitely times when I find myself not adhering to all of these things, and ultimately, my health could be impacted as a result of that, and that is something that I am fully aware of. It basically just comes down to laziness, if I'm being honest, or cutting corners if I'm just popping into the garage to do one quick step on a piece and, skip all the things that I should be putting on. Ironically, I also find that when I'm trying to remember to snag some content and film my processes, that's when I end up forgetting to adhere to these things pretty much the most, which doesn't end up being ideal because I always want to be modeling good, safe behavior to those of you who are looking to me as someone to mimic. So I always try to be sure to add a PSA note to the videos in which I don't have the proper stuff on so that viewers know to basically do as I say and not as I do. I'm trying, okay, guys? So anyways, all of these items that I'm going to mention today are important, so I didn't want to rank them in terms of level of importance of which ones I think you should use the most or you should prioritize or whatever. So we are starting from the toes and working our way up to the tippity top of the head and going over the different pieces of protection and safety equipment and safety gear that you could and should be wearing while doing your furniture makeovers. So let's start with wearing proper footwear, which is important for both your protection and your agility. You don't necessarily need steel-toed boots, although if you already have them, it doesn't hurt to wear them anyways. But you definitely want to be wearing proper footwear that covers the entirety of your foot and fits well. Something that fits well and isn't going to fall off easily like slides or Crocs, at least before they go into sport mode, is important because there is always a possibility of you tripping or slipping and falling, which could cause you harm, especially if you fall onto something sharp or you hit your head or your tailbone really hard or something else and cause damage to yourself or your space, I guess. But primarily to yourself is an issue. And if you're using a stepladder, there's also the possibility of tripping and falling off, especially if you have the elegance of a clumsy baby deer like I do. So in terms of protection, you want to have something durable because there's always the risk of stepping on sharp objects in your workshop, like staples or nails or screws or even pieces of wood that could poke through your average shoe's sole. And there's also the possibility of dropping a piece of furniture that you're moving or that you knock off the bench or something on your foot, or dropping a tool that you're using. Just the other day, I was using a carbide scraper and scraping the door of a chest of drawers that I'm working on right now. And when I got to the edge of it, it did slip and fall out of my hand. Luckily, it missed my foot, but if I had hit my foot, it definitely wouldn't have felt great, and it would bruise at the minimum, but also could have cut me if I had skin exposed. And since there's so many little tiny bones in your feet, there's also always the chance of breaking some of them as well. And also, ideally, you want the footwear that you wear to be comfortable, since you'll be on your feet for long periods of time. So just overall, proper footwear is key. Moving our way up the body, being cognizant of the clothes that you're wearing while refinishing is also really important. Ideally, wearing long sleeves and pants that cover any exposed skin will keep you the most protected. Not only is there the hazard of having chemicals like strippers and solvents and stains come into contact with your skin, but having sawdust and other airborne particles land on your skin and then sit there for an extended period of time is always good to avoid as well. From a protection standpoint, it also helps to guard against any unruly tools that go awry. I've had it happen before where a sanding disc that was on my orbital sander was either too old or just got too much dust up under it, so it no longer adhered properly to the sander, and since it's spinning, it flew off like a little ninja star, which could cut your legs if it hit you. And then there's also been times when an electric sander has hit a corner of something, or I don't know, maybe you like twitch hard or you're not paying attention and the sander jumps across the piece. If it hits your arm or your leg and it's exposed, you're more at risk. So, weather dependent, consider bundling up a bit. Even if you live somewhere where it's super hot, getting a shirt and pants that are in a durable but lightweight material might be a good investment for you. And then also you'll stop getting so much paint and other stains on your clothing, because I know you have a wardrobe full of just a couple specks on everything, because that's exactly what mine looks like as well. It's horrible. And on this note, too, another thing that you can wear if you find that you need them for projects that you're working on is knee pads, and I just picked mine up from Dollarama. They're equally as comfortable and they last just as long from what I've seen, for how often I use them, I guess. So then we make our way down our arms to our hands, the star of the show, because those are the moneymakers that get the refinishing projects done. You should be wearing gloves for the large majority of tasks that you perform in your furniture flips, and there's some different types of gloves that are recommended depending on what you're doing. For working with water and oil-based paints, you can likely just use disposable gloves to keep the finishes from getting onto your skin. You can typically buy these in bulk for pretty cheap, and they come in different materials like latex, nitrile, and vinyl. If you want a more sustainable option, I've also seen biodegradable options, but they typically cost a bit more, so, give and take. Or you can just grab some gardening gloves or dishwashing gloves from the dollar store like I typically use, and they last a lot longer, they're cheap, inexpensive, and still provide the same amount of coverage and protection for those supplies. Now, when you're handling things like paint thinner and strippers, solvents, and other harmful chemicals, you need to be wearing solvent-resistant or chemical-resistant gloves. If you use just regular gloves with these products, you risk the product potentially eating through or melting through your glove, and what's under that glove? Your beautiful skin. And if it was strong enough to eat through the plastic, better believe those chemicals won't treat your skin any better. Typically, if you read the directions and the manufacturer's recommendations on the product label, then it outlines specifically what is needed for that product and whether or not you need this type of glove. Chemical-resistant gloves essentially look just like those dishwashing gloves that I mentioned earlier, but they're made of rubber polymers that will hold up against things like solvents, acids, and oils. So just to reiterate, latex is not resistant to chemicals. So if you've been historically wearing those gloves while dealing with these types of chemicals, my recommendation would be to switch to nitrile ones or others that advertise specifically that they are chemical resistant. There is another type of glove that I've started wearing over maybe the past year that I've personally recommend to people. However, I haven't really looked up the scientific backing of the effectiveness of it, but anecdotally they work for me. And these are anti-vibration gloves, and I've really noticed a difference when I wear them when using an electric sander and other power tools that tend to vibrate a lot. I have a pre-existing injury or issue in my left wrist from a party injury back in the day, and since I'm left-handed, Fun fact, if you didn't already know. I found that when I would be using my electric sanders a lot, it would really irritate my wrist, and then I would get pain and lose some strength in that wrist later in the day and for the following days. So I'll leave a link in the show notes of the pair of gloves that I wear. I find them really comfortable, and I usually wear them when I'm hand sanding as well, so that I can save my fingertips. In case my body ever needs to be identified, or for some other non-Dateline fueled reason. Any other Dateline fans out there? I know there's a lot of you that like the true crime too. Just statistically, I know the demographic of people that lean towards those, and it's pretty similar to the people listening to this. Alright, next, let's make our way up to your mouth and nose, which need to be covered by a mask or a respirator, depending on what you're using and what you're doing. This is because you can harm your lungs and other internal organs if you're breathing dust or chemicals and vapors, especially so when there's repeated and ongoing exposure happening. This can result in breathing issues, illnesses and headaches, or, worse. Now, this was the part that I did some additional research into today so that I could bring you some useful information, and there is a ton out there. So again, always look up specifically what you need for the project that you're currently working on and the products that you're using for said project, but I'll give you a quick overview. So a respirator comes in a half mask or a full face option. What it does is prevent tiny, hard to detect particles from entering your airways and protect you from vapors, chemicals, mold spores, and wood dust, in the context of furniture refinishing at least. These contaminants in the air get removed by the respirator using either a cartridge, a filter, or a canister. The one that I have has a cartridge. You may have seen respirators or masks online or in the stores with something on the packaging that says it's NIOSH approved and IOSH approved, and that refers to the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, which is a division of the Center for Disease Control. This institute, NIOSH, only approves respirators that can capture particles of various sizes, which it then attributes a letter classification to the respirator, an N, R, or P rating. That also includes a number, 95, 99, or 100, which refers to the percentage of airborne particles that the respirator or mask is able to remove from the air. These aren't super important to memorize, but I did find it interesting and informative to understand the difference, so I just thought I would share. So the N rating means it is not oil resistant, so it will protect against dust, mists, and fumes that do not contain oil aerosols. The R rating means it is oil resistant, so it will protect against dust, mists, fumes, and occasional oil particle exposure like lubricants, pesticides, and some solvents. The P rating means it's oil proof, so it will protect against both oil-based and non-oil-based particles. To make this make a bit more sense, one mask option that has become a common household term over the last few years, unfortunately, is the N95 mask, which filters at least 95% of airborne particles, but does not filter oil-based particles because it has that N rating. So, just some fun trivia knowledge to have in your back pocket. Something worth noting, though, is that if you're ever dealing with mold or asbestos, a P100 rating is required to properly protect you and your lungs, because you want essentially none of it to get through. So in general terms, when you're sanding, you're going to want to be wearing a NIOSH approved respirator that's rated for wood dust. And when you're protecting yourself against solvents and chemical vapors, you'll want a cartridge style respirator rated for organic vapors, mists, and paints. The packaging will usually indicate what they're designed for and make it easy to find the right one for the job, but you can also look into the color-coded system for the cartridges that was implemented by the Occupational Health and Safety Administration if you're interested. Alright, so once you have the respirator that you need, there are some precautions to take and some things to keep in mind. It needs to cover both your nose and your mouth fully. Getting an adjustable respirator helps make this easier so that you can get a good fit and a tight seal on your face. There's usually a nose clip that you can mold to the shape of your nose so that you're making sure to get a good secure fit. And you can do a seal check to make sure that nothing will get through by putting both of your hands completely over the respirator and doing a quick, sharp inhale, like if you can get your nose to whistle, even better. You should feel negative pressure inside of it when you do that. And if air leaks out around the nose, you may need to adjust your nose piece again. If it leaks out the edges, make sure that the straps are snug, secure, and flat against your head. And if all of those things are happening and you're still finding that things are getting through, you might have to find a different shape because the one that you have just may not work with your shape of your face or your head. Don't take it personally. There's plenty out there. Another thing worth noting is that they fit best without facial hair, so if you have a beard, a long mustache, or even a good amount of stubble, it will likely cause leaks into the respirator. I remember back when I worked in a men's homeless shelter, and it was kind of the beginning of the fentanyl crisis here, probably in like 2017, 2018, and we all had to get fitted for N95 masks, like the OG N95 masks, to do proper cleanup when we found the fentanyl in clients' belongings or near them when they overdosed. And the guys that I worked with, which almost all of them were, all had to be clean shaven if they wanted to be able to get certified to do that. So that was one time in a male-dominated field that I was very lucky to be a woman. But that's just a sidebar. And so you also want to be inspecting your respirator regularly to make sure that everything is good to go. Theoretically, you should be doing it before every time you use it to make sure that it's still in good working order. So do a check to make sure that there's no cracks, tears, or dirt, and that the straps are all intact and still have good elasticity. And a way that you can tell if you need to replace the respirator, if it's a disposable one, or if you need to change the filters or cartridges, is if you experience any of the 3 Ds: dirty, damaged, or difficult to breathe through. As well, if you ever happen to notice a taste, smell, or irritation from the chemicals or particles in the air when you're wearing the respirator, and you do all those checks to make sure it's like fitting well, you can replace the cartridges and then do a seal check before getting back at it. If you're tasting, smelling, or getting irritated from those things, it's probably a good indicator that you need to switch it out. And you can also access a service life calendar for your cartridges to establish a change schedule for them. If you go to 3M, the number 3m.com/servicelife, or check OSHA's website for common change schedules based on the substance-specific standards that they have if you want to err on the side of caution. Next up is ear protection. When using power tools, it's always important to protect our ears, or else you might notice some temporary or longer lasting ringing in your ears after using things like power saws and electric sanders. Just getting some basic but reliable earmuffs or earplugs will really help with this. I'm someone who typically has earphones in while I work because I'm usually listening to podcasts or music, which inevitably might impact my hearing one day anyways because I put it louder than the sounds that I'm making with my power tools. But anyways, here we are. I will link some earplugs that I've recently come across that are way more comfortable in my opinion compared to the plain orange ones that you usually see. Over the last few months, I have actually become an earplug connoisseur of sorts as our little puppy Yukon got used to holding his business throughout the night and getting used to sleeping in his crate and being, at times, not so quiet about his objections about it. So these ones that I've now found have been way better at A, blocking out the sound, and B, they don't leave the inside of my ear canals feeling like sore and uncomfortable like the orange ones were. Like, even after I took them out, it was almost like an aching in my ear canal, and I don't think it was a matter of having them too deep, because I put these ones just as deep, but the orange ones just kind of like filled it up more, I guess. I don't know, maybe they were just too big for my little baby ears, I don't know, but I like them way better, similarly priced, and they look cooler too. So next up, we have eye protection, which is another important one to make sure that you're consistently wearing. There's technically 2 types of eye protection that you should ideally have on hand to use: safety glasses and splash goggles. Safety glasses look like regular glasses with added panels on the sides to protect your eyes from things that can fly into your eye. They're usually shatterproof as well, so if something like a piece of metal or wood is flying through the air quickly, it won't break the glasses and end up in your eyeball anyways, which could happen with, just regular pieces of glass. Splash goggles, on the other hand, have protected edges that wrap all the way around your eyes to prevent liquids from being able to get into your eyes from splashing, or just spills ending up on your skin from applying with a roller or brush painting, or just having something randomly go wrong and happen to splash into your eye. Shit happens. Honestly, I normally just wear safety glasses, but absolutely see the benefit in having goggles as well. I should probably grab myself a pair. I am super vigilant about always having eye protection on when I'm working. Even if I'm just running out to do a quick thing, I always make sure that I have something on. I don't think I've shared this before, but I'm actually legally blind in my left eye. So basically, if anything were to ever happen to my right eye and affect my vision, I'd basically be fucked. I'd be blind. So this is super imperative for me, and honestly, it should be for you too, even if you have two fully functional eyeballs. There's so many things flying all over the place, and about absolutely none of them are good to have in your eyes. So like I said, I wouldn't rank any of these in levels of importance, but if I had to, I would put eye protection at number 1. That and a respirator, maybe tied. So the only other thing that I want to quickly mention, which is less of a safety thing and more of just a wellness or protection thing, is that I started going to a new hairstylist recently who far exceeds anyone I've ever gone to before in terms of their level of care and attention and just overall knowledge and educating me about my hair. And he pointed out something that sounds super obvious and straightforward when you hear it, but I had never really thought about prior to that. When he found out what I do for work, he recommended wearing a hat or a ball cap or whatever to cover my hair when I'm working, especially when sanding and using power tools, because the dust that it creates can get onto our scalp and on our hair follicles and impact it. You can end up with skin irritation, it can dry out your hair and the ends of it, or it can make your hair follicles weak and eventually lead to hair falling out as a result. So best to be safe and not sorry, and cover up those beautiful locks the next time that you're in the workshop, my friends. The more you know. We learn something new every day. Maybe someone already knew about that or just put 2 and 2 together, but, sometimes I have to get there the long way. And something you may not know about me, I love little motivational messages. They always get me fired up, and so I keep a running list of ones that are especially catchy or speak to me in the Notes app on my phone. So I make it a priority to end every podcast episode with one of them that I've noted down over the years, because I want you to leave our time here each week feeling inspired, motivated, and ready to take on whatever this week brings for you. So this week's Mel's motivational message is, if you don't choose your truth, the universe will. Going a little bit on the woo-woo side for this one, and does it align with safety equipment? Maybe not as much. However, hear me out. If you don't choose your truth, the universe will. So you have to take those steps, those precautions, those pieces of safety gear that you have to put on, the equipment. You need to make a bit of an investment because these things cost money, but we're doing that because we are choosing our truth, our future, the future health and protection of ourselves, of our bodies, and the future of us continuing to do this work long term if we so choose. If you don't choose your truth in life in general, the universe will. And I don't want to leave my life up to chance or to having my outcome depend on anything other than what I want it to be. Crazy thought? I don't know. So that's why I'm really intentional with things like my mindset, with my motivation, with my systems that I set up, with my habits, with the way that I do this work, the way I plan this work out, the way I plan my life out. All these things are interwoven in terms of me pursuing the things that I want in life, pursuing the reality that I want in life, pursuing the schedule and the freedom and the flexibility that I ideally want my life to encompass and to include. And if I wasn't making these intentional strides towards it, would I end up with it one day? Maybe, but maybe not. And if I didn't have it, I'd probably be a little bit bitter that I didn't do what I could to try and pursue it, to try and get where I see myself being when I'm daydreaming or when I'm thinking 5, 10, 20, 30 years ahead and what I want my life to look like and how I want to feel and how I want to act and how I want to look and how I want my bank account to look and who I want to have around me and all those things. They all contribute to our future. If we're talking about this message, the truth, So I recommend, if you're not already, get intentional with those things, because if you don't choose your truth, the universe will. And I don't know what your juju, what your karma's like, but if you've, been cutting people off in traffic, maybe flipping the bird, maybe you have some things that you're not so proud of in your past, I can only assume you do. We all do. So if you got that kind of karmic energy out there, I'm not even that spiritual of a person, but I still don't want to fuck with that stuff, So I would recommend doing what you can to choose your own truth, to create the life that you dream of, the life that you want. And then even if the worst thing that happens is you don't reach that, at least you tried. Because how brutal would it be to not end up there and then think, I don't like this, and maybe I could have made it different if I had done something to change it, So take your life, grab the bull by the horns, and get going. Choose your own truth. And stay safe. Maybe that should be the overarching message. Stay safe, stay protected, because I want to keep you around for a little longer. All right, that's it for now. I appreciate your time, and I will catch you guys next week.